Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to this evening's program. At this time, I would just like to extend a warm welcome to our illustrious panelists. Our moderator will definitely speak more to our panelists. I also want to extend a warm welcome to our drum ministry and Lifehouse team. They will be doing a role play at the beginning of this evening's program. Now, we know that the month of May is Mental Health Awareness Month, but we want to keep at the forefront of our minds the importance of mental health every single day, not just a 1 month, but it's important that we actually recognize mental health in the month of May so everybody can catch on. Now, coming together in support of mental health is always a very good thing. This evening's program focuses on recognizing and managing depression and anxiety in youths. There will be, as I said before, a short role play, and then we will get right into our program. Our moderator, Glavine Macbeth, is one of our young adults here at Kansas Avenue. She's a crisis support counselor, a mental health advocate, and a peer specialist. She currently serves as an outreach coordinator for the Be Well and Mindfully, and serves as a valuable point of contact for individuals and communities seeking mental health resources. She's currently pursuing a degree in psychology. And Glavine Macbeth is my eldest daughter. I am yours truly, the youth ministry leader. I am also a member of the Health Ministries Committee. Sister Norma Usher is the Health Ministry Director. She's doing a wonderful job, and she spearheaded this evening's program. So let's give a round of applause for all of us who are present, our panelists, our guests, and Sister Norma. At this time, we'll invite Elder Macbeth as he do a short devotional scripture and prayer before we have our drama ministry. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Our scriptural meditation for this evening comes to us from Philippians chapter 4, and we will be focusing on verses 6 and 7. It says, "Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and mind through Christ Jesus." I invite us to stand as we pray. Our gracious and eternal Father, we thank you for having been with us from morning until now as we enter into this program, which is focusing on recognizing and managing anxiety and depression in youth. We ask that you would be with us. Bless all the participants this evening and help so that the audience or the congregation will be informed, will be given tools so that they can utilize it to help the young people around them. We ask that you send your Holy Spirit now to guide our minds and help so that we will emerge from this evening's program more informed so that we can help those around us who are suffering from these things. So we ask that you will take full charge of the rest of this evening's proceedings and save us when you come in your everlasting kingdom. We pray for Christ's sake. Amen.
And now we'll invite our drama.
Did you see what she was wearing?
what a powerful skit. As we have observed, there is unfortunately a correlation between bullying and anxiety and depression in our youth. Before we dive further into some questions I have associated with this skit, I want to thank my mother, Sister Macbeth, for the warm introduction, and I just want to express gratitude for being in this space with these esteemed guest panelists, and thank you all for coming out to our program this afternoon. So my first question, oh yes. So before I go ahead and ask the panelists a few questions about the skit, I'm gonna go ahead and introduce our panelists. Okay. So Dr. Allison Hicks is a mental health / relationship expert, a television personality, and founder of the Doe Consulting Group. Dr. Ali, as she's known, holds a PhD in clinical health psychology with a particular interest in branding, cultivating happiness, empathy, how perception transforms experience, and empowerment through creativity. She's also a lecturer at California State University in Los Angeles. Next to Dr. Allison Hicks. Okay. Hi, Dr. Hicks. Yes. Next to Dr. Allison Hicks is her mother, Dr. Cynthia Powell Hicks, who is a multi-award winning medical professional. She has an MA and a PhD in psychology and has served as chief psychologist at Hicks Medical Clinic, where she works with abused children, victims and witnesses of violent crimes, and trained medical and doctoral interns in clinical techniques. Okay, so we have Dr. Cynthia Powell Hicks. Now we have Dr. Anjanette M. Hogan, who's a medical doctor born and raised in South Central Los Angeles. She graduated Washington Preparatory High School, then entered Spelman College, where she majored in biology / pre-medicine. She found her time at Spelman to be essential to her journey as not only a woman, but as a physician. It was also at Spelman College that she was initiated into the illustrious Eta Kappa chapter of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, incorporated in the spring of 1995. She's still an active member of the Inglewood Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc., where she has served as the committee chairs for physical and mental health and September breakfast. After graduating from Spelman, she attended UCLA School of Medicine and completed her psychiatric residency training at White Memorial Medical Center in Los Angeles, California. Upon completion of her pediatric residency, she worked as a physician at a large mental health clinic in an underserved community, a cause near and dear to her heart. She now runs a successful pediatric practice in Gardena, California. A staunch advocate of youth empowerment, she also birthed her nonprofit Youthful Joy Foundation in 2014. The mission of the nonprofit being to provide joy to our youth through health. We are grateful for the unparalleled work our panelists have put into the mental health space and their dedication to the betterment of youth and young adults. At this time, I will go ahead and ask a few questions based on our skit. Okay, so Dr. Allison Hicks, looking at the skit made me realize the impact that bullying has on mental health issues such as anxiety and depression in our youth. So I want to say, were there some warning signs that you observed in the skit that you think would contribute to someone's mental health struggles?
Hello, hello, hello. Well, I would say when it comes to warning signs, we obviously saw some behaviors in the bullies that were a reflection of some trauma that they were experiencing at home. And some of the terms that I like to use is leaking. A lot of folks who have unprocessed trauma have a hard time maintaining and containing it. And so they almost are seeking a level of homeostasis and trying to create balance. So if they're experiencing negativity internally, they begin to leak that into their environment and thereby cause kind of, chaos and anxiety and distress for other people because it's hard for them to exist with so much inner turmoil in a calm space. And so they therefore go about creating the turmoil that they experience in the environment around them.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please.
I just wanted to piggyback off of that with the leaking, and I had a patient once before, and she was so full of anger and hate and depression that she would, because she had been traumatized as a young person, that she would actually, while walking to school, she would snatch kids and traumatize the kids on their way to school. She would snatch them and start beating them up and assaulting them like in the bushes on the way to school. So that does happen, especially if once the patient has been traumatized or the person's been traumatized and they don't go for appropriate psychiatric or psychological mental health support.
Wow. So we're seeing this explicit representation of what trauma looks like and how in youths they may display such trauma. So Dr. Anjanette Hogan, I'm going to ask you physically, as a pediatrician, what does trauma in your youth patients look like?
Hello. Trauma looks like different things in my practice, but usually you can tell by weight loss or weight gain. Those are the major two components. Also, you can tell because they usually tend to do some type of self-harm. So when I'm doing my physical exam, you look for old scars or new scars. They tend to be, if it's anxious, the nails will be unkept or because they're chewing the nails, and then also loss of hair from kind of just pulling the hair out and constant nervousness. So that's usually what it looks like. So as far as what I tend to do before I do the referrals is to make sure there's no hormonal or metabolic imbalances that could be making the situation even worse than it is. So in addition to doing the referrals, we do thyroid studies and nutrient studies, iron studies, and lead studies from the medical point of view, because of course to assist the psychiatrist or the psychologist and what they're going to do, we have to make sure their actual overall health is stable before, especially if they're going to consider any type of pharmacotherapy or medical management.
So this question goes back to you, Dr. Allison Hicks. So many individuals see anxiety, as just a moment of discomfort, many individuals see anxiety as just perhaps a moment of discomfort, a natural reaction to life stressors. How would you define anxiety, and what are some of the ways we can teach our youth and young adults to manage their symptoms of anxiety?
Absolutely. There's pathological anxiety, and then there is appropriate anxiety, right? We have eustress and stress. So there are some levels of stress that are very adaptive and help us to function better in the world. That's what we refer to as eustress or appropriate anxiety, I guess you could say. And so it is our body's response to stress in our environment. But we fall into inappropriate anxiety or stress once we begin to see functional impairments. So if we see somebody that is no longer able to focus on school and now their grades are suffering, if we see somebody who has a lot of anxiety and worry about relationships and so they're having a hard time maintaining relationships in their life. So just like the doctor was saying earlier, if we're looking at changes, so we have like weight changes, a person comes in and they have lost 20 pounds and they didn't mean to, or they've gained 20 pounds and they didn't mean to. These types of changes in the way that they function is what we look for when we are beginning to see if a person's response to stress becomes abnormal or not supportive for them. Because stress, it serves a purpose. Like, we can't be chill all the time. We got to get our homework done. We got to get our work done. And stress comes to help us make sure we can do that. If a dog is running after you, you don't want to stand there and be patient. You want to get the heck out of there. And so it's good to be stressed in short spurts. But in our modern lives, our stress has become chronic. And our body doesn't necessarily know the difference between a deadline at work and a bear running into your cave, right? And so we are responding as if a bear or something is coming to actually hinder us and hurt us physiologically, when actually it's something like a deadline or a relationship breaking, because we even see with broken relationships what we call broken heart syndrome, for example, a pseudo takotsubo. So we have people who will actually experience heart damage and symptoms that look like heart attack as a result of a breaking up of a relationship, which can fall under kind of the category of anxiety type, stress type disorders. So we can see that it can have a very real effect on us. And so that's when we're starting to see it as being something significant, when we're beginning to see the functional changes in a person's life. Hey, bro.
Hi, welcome. And at this time, I will introduce our other esteemed guest panelist, Dr. Ricardo White. Dr. Ricardo White was raised in a single-parent home in a neighborhood ravaged by drugs during the 1980s. This fueled his passion to become an addiction psychiatrist, and he has since dedicated his life to preventing addiction and mental illness from destroying families. In the past 20 years, he has helped over 50,000 individuals change their lives. Realizing the need for preventative measures to lay the foundation for optimal mental health, he co-founded the Mastermind Institute. This institute specializes in helping individuals on the edge of burnout, those who are feeling overwhelmed and struggling with life's meaning, to operate under the philosophy, if you master your mind, you will master your life. Yes.
You're supposed to wave.
So, yes, of course. So, Dr. White, I wanted to glean light on the fentanyl crisis that we are currently experiencing nationwide. And as an individual who has, put in magnanimous work in the mental health space, specifically in the substance abuse space, what are some of the warning signs you see in young adults impacted by that struggle?
Testing 1, 2, 3, we good? All right, beautiful. A Canadian addictionologist by the name of Dr. Bruce Alexander wrote a book, The Globalization of Addictions. And in that book, he identified a phenomenon known as the dislocation theory. And what he ultimately predicted in his work was wherever you get a situation where, for example, industrialization leads to people getting isolated and disconnected from the vital areas of their lives, we should not be surprised when we see a proliferation in addictions. And I think as you look at the pandemic, or you look at young people really feeling isolated, it's no surprise that they would be looking for ways to cope, and certain ways to cope that are less than ideal. When we're talking about addictions, all we're talking about is, a simple definition is something that is both compulsive and something that has negative consequences. That's what essentially an addiction is. And so when you take a look at fentanyl, so what we're observing is a person will come in on methamphetamines, and then you'll also see fentanyl. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're adding it as they're, expanding the methamphetamine. So you feel something, but it's no surprise that you're going to see this overuse of substances, basically.
At this time, I want to invite our audience members to share any questions that they may have so far.
Come on up. Is that Rat Park?
What's
Is that
that?
the Rat Park?
That's Rat Park.
Yeah. I
Absolutely.
quote that to people all the time. I'm like, once we include people in
Hi. So my question is as it relates to children who are in foster care, or children who may encounter CPS and have been children who have been victimized. How does the mental health, your services affect those children? Do you partner with counties or cities that serve those disenfranchised children, or what services do you offer?
What county are you in?
Pardon?
What
I work
county?
for Riverside County.
Okay, you have
Yes.
an excellent program in Riverside County. I specialize in, I was a CEO for 30, I don't know what's going on, yeah. I was a CEO for 35 years in residential care facilities throughout Southern California. So I commend you for all that your county has been doing. And you're familiar with STRTP?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Most of the facilities now have their own in-house psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, their own in-house mental health type programs. From time to time, the programs will have to seek consultation, especially for substance abuse. Not everyone has that program, and they'll have group or support type centers for them, as well as 5150s. You're familiar with that?
Yes,
If there's
ma'am.
suicidal ideations or attempts. And we use ETS almost on the regular at the time, which is in Riverside.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
thank you kindly.
You know, it's a great point with regard to county resources, because I think a lot of times we can underestimate the quality of the practitioners and the services that are provided in the county settings. So my organization, the Mastermind Institute, we target the workforce. So we recognize that a lot of people are burnt out, and so we provide corporate solutions to the workforce.
So I'm not in Riverside County, but I'm in LA County. So normally I'm familiar with CPS because they have to get a physical within like the first 30 days of placement. So usually I'm the first stop before even the mental health, because I have to assess them, and then in my office, like I said, run the tests that I run, and then we do the referrals to the different mental health facilities for them to follow up.
And each of the clients also have case managers, as well as they have psychiatric and psychological programs and plans for each of the clients, and they have to be updated every 6 months. Thank you.
What does ETS stand for? Do you remember?
Oh, emergency psychological treatment. EPS. Whoops.
I'll look it up.
Emergency psychological services.
No, emergency therapeutic
Oh,
services. Sorry.
therapeutic.
Yeah, I didn't have a T in that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, I have a question as it relates to recognizing depression and anxiety in youths. Now, for our parents who are present here, what are some of the things you'd want to tell them to look for to determine if their child or children is experiencing some sort of anxiety or depression? And also, could you define depression? Because there are folks who believe that depression is something that you could just get out of. And you'll hear comments like, "You're so pretty, why are you depressed?"
Whoa.
Or, you go to church, you don't believe in God, that kind of stuff. And people feel like it's just something you can snap yourself out of. And they, I think depression is the same thing as just feeling sad. So could you explain what depression is? What are some of the signs and symptoms that you'd advise parents to look for in their children before things get worse? And how to actually seek care, and what are some of the care modalities? Thank you.
I love how many questions you asked. That was a lot.
All
Love
in
it.
one.
Are you going to bill her?
100% expect a bill in the mail.
No.
So depression, we have a range of expressions, right? When you look at 2, 3, 4 different clients with depression, they can all look very different, but still have the same diagnosis. And so we are, typically with depression, we're looking at things like psychomotor slowing. So that's people getting a little bit more lethargic, having more sleep, but they can also have increased sleep, right? We're looking at a decrease in diet, also an increase in diet. We're looking at normally depressed mood. So that is something that we do see more often, but in children, we can actually see agitated mood. Right, so sometimes when kids are really irritable, it can be a sign of pending depression, whereas we tend to think of depression from the perspective of adults. Adults don't tend to have as much irritability, unless sometimes women do. But it's something we kind of don't think about. And so we can misdiagnose and misread depression when we see it in younger people. But one of the things that I typically tell parents to look for is any changes. So if there's something that your kid used to really love doing and all of a sudden they don't like it, that's when you should be kind of thinking like, oh, what's going on? They used to really like soccer. They don't want to go anymore. If there's changes in, like I was saying, diet, sleep, weight, so you're really looking for any change, and that should be enough to say, like, let's go in to see a doctor, because you don't have to be a therapist. You don't have to be a psychologist. You don't have to be a psychiatrist. You're a parent. And even if you are a psychiatrist, you can't be your kids, right? And so it's just about noticing signs, noticing symptoms, and not being afraid to take them in to see a first point of contact, which typically is a medical doctor. They go see their family doctor, their pediatrician, and they're like, okay, yeah, we're seeing something here. Let's definitely refer them out. So I always recommend that people go, because what you were saying earlier too, that depression isn't just a psychogenic, psychological disorder, it is physiological, biological. And so when we see hormone imbalances, thyroids, or even reproductive hormone imbalances, we can begin to see an increase in symptoms that look like depression or look like anxiety. So we can have physiological phenomena that are mirroring mental health issues, or mental health issues that can also begin to mirror and mimic physiological issues. And so we want to be able to parse that out. And so your medical doctor can send you to all kinds of biological testing, EEGs, all types of things that you can do, blood tests, and then you can get referred out to maybe a place like a question you were asking earlier, like the BMC, the Behavioral Medicine Center, where you can have integrative care on multiple different levels, where you have all types of doctors and mental health professionals who are meeting with your kid. So don't be scared to send them somewhere. Hopefully they will not judge you. They should not judge you. And don't be afraid to just go out and take them.
Yeah. I also look for patterns. Patterns like in school, that's usually the first sign when the teacher will have a concern about a child that's running away from school or showing up late, crying, listless, maybe assaulting other children on the playground. I look for those type of patterns. If your child hasn't done that before and they're starting to do it, notice it. Have a conversation with your child. Know what's normal for your child. And if you hear that your child is having problems, don't be afraid, as Dr. Alley said, to take the next step. I know I get referrals from pastors. Sometimes they're the first point as well, or from teachers. You know, they will, the teachers, like you're sitting at an IEP meeting, individual educational meeting in school. School's usually the first point where I receive concern, because they might be sleeping more in school, as Dr. Alley definitely mentioned, and you just want to have a non-judgmental ear when you speak to your child. Also know that if you don't get help for the children, I don't want to scare you, but you will put your time in now with them, or you'll put your time in later with them when it may be too late. So I always promote prevention versus intervention, but obviously if you need the intervention, definitely use it, because the streets are there. They're ready. They want to work with our kids. And they have fentanyl, they have other self-pharmaceutical type drugs that our kids will use to sedate the pain that they are experiencing. And we want them to be able to use positive measures for coping.
And I think it's, what I find is really interesting with parents, especially post-COVID and kind of in the age of social media, you have to be comfortable parenting. And when you come to, I tell parents all the time, when you come to see me, a physical is the whole body, mind. Physical, it's mental, and it's also sexual health. So don't go into your child's annual with questions about their mental health and not answer. In our pediatric training, we do have an ASQ, which is an adolescent screening questionnaire that they fill out so that we can get an example of what's going on if we should address, just in case the parents don't mention it. And the other thing I also tell parents, that you have to be allowed to let, like she said, have open communication. And for me, I tend to ask the parent to step out, because the child needs to speak freely, and parents need to be comfortable with their pediatrician that they chose, that if there is an issue, it will be addressed. Because a lot of times I do just have appointments that are just now post-COVID, just strictly about some mental health issue, but the child doesn't really want, or the teen doesn't really want to discuss it with the parent in the room. So you have to give the teen or the adolescent the space so that we can get the answers we need, and trust that if there is an issue of self-harm, that we will bring you in, but also we can have conversations and open up doors to encourage the teen or the adolescent to talk to the parents so that they will get the help that they need. But I just urge parents to understand that the physical is just more than checking their weight in their eyes and giving shots. It's for the entire well-being of the body. So you have to ask those questions. If your child is totally fine physically, but you have some other questions, then you should be comfortable with your pediatrician that in that space, their mental health is part of their annual checkup.
So piggybacking off what you said, according to data that was accrued by LA County's public health, suicide is the third leading cause of death among the youth population. So this begs the question, you mentioned the importance of like the parents' role and the teacher's role. How can we as a community support our youth facing anxiety, depression, and
I think first and
suicidality?
foremost, the community has to understand that it is real. Like the young lady mentioned, a lot of people and some parents, depending on the cultural background, the ethnic background, you have food, you have a house, you went to prom, you can't be sad. Or you're the captain of the football team, why are you sad? Or I bought you those Jordans, you can't be sad. So the question is, we have to admit that it is a disease just as everything else, and that it requires sometimes medication. Remove the stigma, be comfortable in communication. A lot of times parents want to talk at the child or at the teen and not to them and engage in conversation. And it's interesting because I don't have children, nor do I ever want to bear children.
Whoa.
So
I like you
have
more
a
every
different-
minute.
I have a different perspective when it comes, because I'm open to whatever they say. And so I get them to say a lot of things, and I try to get parents to understand that there's a dialogue that needs to happen, and not just telling them everything they've done for them and why they have no reason to be upset. So at its very base, we have to admit that it is a disease, it is a problem, and they're not just sad for no reason. There's a lot, as she mentioned, Dr. Ali mentioned, there's a lot of chemical imbalances and hormonal imbalances and things that half the time the teen doesn't really want to be in that state, but they don't know how to get out of it. And we have to address that and not just be like, oh, not my child. I know my child isn't crazy enough for all the stuff I do. You'd be amazed at things parents say. And I'm like, so we have to first, I think at its bare minimum, understand that it is a problem. And post-COVID and already post-internet social media, it's a very large, epidemic.
Yeah,
I think overcoming the stigma, our culture is anti-mental health. I can remember when I first told someone back in the 80s that I was going into mental health, they looked at me as though I was going to be a witch doctor. Now, thanks to COVID, everybody wants to be with me. Yeah, so I think we have to work there, and we have to work in the home first. Children and teens are observing parents, grandparents, whatever relative you have. They are observing how we embrace trauma. All of us have trauma. If you're living, you're going to have trauma. So how do we process it? So how does a teen feel comfortable with their stuff, bringing it to us? Because they might prefer taking it to some, Pookie on the street.
Pookie.
Sorry, yeah.
Whoa.
But I
Sorry if
I
anyone's
believe-
named Pookie out there.
I align. And so we have the biological, we have lots of things, happening within our bodies that we may not always understand. And then I think we also, like we've alluded to, we have a cultural problem here in the US. We are one of the most unhappy countries on the planet.
Oh, and let me say,
there's,
sorry, I was going to say California is the second highest state in the United States for suicide.
yeah. There is not necessarily a correlation between financial success and happiness, right? $75,000 is kind of the cap, and so there's no connection to finances, income, wealth, and joy. And I think a part of the problem, because like Dr. White mentioned earlier, when isolated, humans do and function in very predictable ways. There is an increase in sadness. There can be an increase in depression. When I worked in I worked in a psych hospital, a number of psych hospitals, and you can begin to see institutionalization setting in when clients have been there for a long period of time, because the isolation, the rigid structures can begin to change the way humans function. And so I think that the answer to that question is a little larger than maybe we can actually tackle it with just one person, but it's a zeitgeist change. It's pivoting the way Americans connect to one another. it's instead of shaming somebody for not making enough, not having the job that you think they should have, not having the religion you think they should have, not doing the things that you believe they should do, connecting, supporting. There's this, I don't know if this is true, but there's this cultural phenomena in certain African groups where when someone commits a crime in that community, instead of throwing them into jail, the whole community comes out and stands around them in a circle and tells them all the things that they do that are good, and tells them the way that they impact the community for the better. So like, do those things, not stealing, robbing, hurting. Like, why don't you do this? And I think that that's one of the benefits of a collective culture. And as Black folks, as brown folks, we are a collective culture embedded within an individualistic American culture. And so we have a hard time, I think, finding our balance. And do I think suicide is cured exclusively by being told they love you? No. There's so much more to it, as we've been talking about. But I think that that's one of the paradigm shifts that we might want to see as a community and as a culture that might help people feel less alone and less likely to maybe do something that was so final.
Yeah, I also think that the church is, for years, has been the backbone of the African American community. And I know this particular church has a mental health committee. They have mental health specialists that also attend this particular church. And also, they have a program called Grief Share, which takes it outside of just the organicity and the major pathology, but it takes it into a situational type, mental health type program. And that speaks to what we've been talking about, making a community and being there for each other.
Okay. And now we'll take a question from our audience member.
Yes, I wanted to ask a question about are there any free resources for teens as far as counseling? I know a lot of teens are scrolling on TikTok and Instagram and whatnot. So as they are scrolling, are there any free resources that maybe they might even be able to find as they're scrolling? Do you know of any that we can recommend to teens that they might go to the website or go to their social media page to get free counseling or like a hotline to call in, something of that sort?
I have a tool I can refer you to. One of the approaches that I'm very proud the Mastermind Institute has adopted and we base our treatment on is our proprietary 7 Vitals framework. With our 7 Vitals, it's really an expansion on the biopsychosocial model, but it's as if it's better than a urine drug screen. So Dr. Ali mentioned the power of noting change, and I hope you didn't miss that, because that can definitely be a very powerful hallmark. I gotta pause for a second. Are you a psychologist as well?
Yes. Yes, so I graduated and could not march because I was in labor with.
That's what's up.
So in the meantime,
that's what's up. Can I finish? Can I finish? Can I
Children ruin your life.
Can I say this real quick? Like, if out of 100 psychologists, do you know how many of them are Black? The number would be 3. The number would be 3. You want to talk about like health disparities. Out of 100 psychiatrists, 5 of them would be Black. But I just think it's so awesome that you guys are a mother and a daughter that are both psychologists. Like that's awesome.
I'm a life coach, but sure, I'll take it.
She's a psychologist. She's in denial.
She was on rotations, in the BMC, in the facility at Loma Linda where I was. She's a psychologist.
That's where we met.
But it's a really beautiful, it's a beautiful thing, and it's easy to overlook. It's super easy, but it's absolutely amazing. And the way they interact, too, is really cool to just look at.
Hilarious.
That's why we had the show, like mother, like daughter.
So 7 Vitals framework that is a build out on the biopsychosocial model. The first is spiritual, okay? And these provide you some very simple questions that you can ask them, and it's a cool discussion, all right? Your greatest weapon is listening. Even when we tell you talk to your kids, it's sort of a misnomer because, yeah, there'll be a time to say something, but it's after being informed by very diligent listening. And we don't do that too often. And some of us communicate so poorly, our kids don't want to talk to us. If you find yourself in that position, there's a good likelihood they really don't even need to say anything. So I will have the occasional patient who doesn't want to talk, at which time I pull back and I say to myself, what is this person in their nonverbal screaming at me? Mm-hmm. What is it that they've said so much they are frustrated and don't want to have to say it again? And that's where sometimes I might come and I might say, I gather you're upset because you don't feel like you've been heard. And I might even take a stab at what it is I think they're saying. But the bottom line is listen. And these are some questions that could inform your conversation, you know, in terms of where are you spiritually? Where are you from a spiritual standpoint? Where are you in your relationships, okay? Both non-romantic and romantic. Where are you in terms of resources? How are you managing finances? How are you managing your resources and your responsibilities? The next would be time. How are you managing time? The next is health, both mental and physical. Where are you in your health? You know, are you getting your doctor's appointments? Is everything okay? But then, of course, also, where are you from a mental standpoint? How are you doing? How do you feel? Are you up? You're down? And this is a big one. Where are you with purpose? You know, what is it that you feel like you're on this planet to do? What do you want to do when you grow up? When I say this to my older kids, they kind of laugh, you know. But it's getting to that conversation. And then you put your language on this. And then what do you like to do for fun? What our kids like to do for fun can often be an inroad for relationship. If we really respect that, if we really attune to it, that can be our inroad. That can be where you can start to build relationships so that you can get this information that you can then act on. When our kids were young, we were able to use force, okay? We were able to say, don't stand there. I'm going to stand here. You could pick them up and put them somewhere else. And that changes
I never
very
did
quickly.
that, yeah.
And that's why she's sitting
We were
next to
wild children.
So I'm going to interrupt really quickly, Dr. White. I do want to share some free mental health resources with the audience member that asked. I am a mental health outreach coordinator for the Be Well line, which offers free 24/7 mental health support with trained counselors. And we also, because of a generous grant the state of California has given us, we're able to support our community members with free therapy sessions with licensed marriage and family therapists and psychologists. So I have some flyers that I'll be able to give out afterwards. I have the number here for the 24/7 mental health support. That number is 866-211-6398. You'll be able to come by and scan a QR code and see this information for yourself. And again, this is the Be Well line.
Yeah.
Round of applause.
That's good.
Yeah. And then
Also, I have
I think-
a suicide hotline number, which is 800-273-TALK.
And then I think Glenveen and I are the only ones on TikTok, probably in this whole room. But there's this like little black lady that pops up after you've been on TikTok too long, the one that tells you to slow down. Have you seen her yet? Oh God, you're not on as long as I am.
Oops.
There's this little black lady gets on and she says, you know what? Have you taken a break?
Wow.
Maybe you should do something. Turn your eyes away from your phone. So she's really sweet. Then there's Dr. Joy. She is a wonderful person to follow on TikTok. She is the founder of Therapy for Black Girls. And she has a wonderful podcast that I think is also really amazing. And then another web resource is therapyforblackmen.org. And that's a great resource. And then on Instagram, there is the Holistic Psychologist. And she has really great, wonderful points and like poignant perspectives. And I think she's on TikTok as well. So those are some people that I really support and advocate for.
And then I'm just going to add really quick. There is an app that was recently developed called the Teen Talk app, and that app not only allows for peer support, because sometimes individuals want to be able to talk to someone that they believe understands their exact situation. So not only are you able to have peer support, but you can also volunteer as a teen yourself. And I think that's a great way, to help support each other through this mental health crisis.
I have a question specifically for Dr. Ricardo White, as it relates to the substance abuse crisis in the Inland Empire. And also, I want to kind of bring that home. Are you aware, how about, what is it in terms of awareness that the church, I just want to kind of bring it home. I'm trying to frame the question. How aware is our churches about the substance abuse crisis, even among our youths in the church? Another thing I want to say is that how can we break the silos where individuals are experiencing this and that, and it's this little secret, like secret society, everybody in their little secret corner, not sharing because of shame, because of the stigma, because of all of that kinds of stuff. How can we break that cycle so we can help to heal our kids?
So cannabis legalization has created I don't know if crisis is the right word, but it would be virtually impossible for the church to not be aware of the huge problem that cannabis is posing, especially to our families, where a lot of us are very committed to being drug-free. And now you have basically a number of states in the nation legalizing it so that you can't even argue that it's illegal. So that's just one drug. And I think I'm getting calls about it, so it would suggest that there's awareness, but there's also tremendous paralysis as far as, okay, what do we do? So what I was getting at is one of the things that we're vitally connected to is purpose. And here's why purpose is such a big deal. There are roughly about 48,000 Americans who die of suicide annually. 1.2 million actually attempt. Back to the 48,000 though, of those that suicide, 54% of them are not known to have a psychiatric diagnosis, okay? That might mean they haven't been diagnosed because sometimes there's inadequate services, but it also means having a psychiatric diagnosis is not a prerequisite for suiciding. Okay, so it underscores how important purpose is. So for a person to be actively suicidal, you know what's the two things they need? All they need is to have a loss of purpose, loss of hope, and be desperate. You don't need a diagnosis. You just need to be brought to a situation where you feel desperate and hopeless. So what that means is purpose is a big deal. We really need to be paying attention to, hey man, what are you living for? What are you committed to? What are you passionate about? Sometimes in our community, if they're not interested in law or medicine, we've got a problem with that. Law, medicine, maybe engineering, we'll allow for engineering, maybe accounting, And I think when they talk about what they're passionate about, hey, I want to be a singer, we'll poo-poo it, I want to do something in the arts. Look, man, if that's what they're passionate about, okay, if you wipe that away, that's a problem. That's a problem. And I get it as a parent, watching mistakes occur in slow motion. It's painful. And not even have the luxury of then saying, yo, man, you may, I told you so. No, I didn't see that coming. Oh, my goodness. You got to play along. I get it. It's hard. But what I'm really saying is it is very dangerous to undermine a person's purpose. And some of our kids are frustrated that when they talk to us about what they were passionate about, we poo-pooed it. We dismissed it. So one of the free resources that we offer, and this is more for parents, if you land on our website, killingburnout.com, there is a 3 dimensions of purpose handout that you get so that you can work through that to identify what is your purpose. What is your purpose? Because purpose is such of a big deal. At least it can help you frame the conversation, if not for yourself, but then definitely for your young person. But when they tell you what they're passionate about, provided it's legal, at least hopefully
Well,
it's
weed
legal.
is now, so.
I'm just saying. Champion it, support them. Killingburnout.com. Killingburnout.com.
Killingburnout.com.
That's correct.
Burnout, okay.
Yeah, killingburnout.com.
Also, it's good to have with young people goals and objectives, because they're definitely going to get it once they come in for therapy. So why not start it at home and giving them positive reinforcement for it? Unconditional, unjudgmental ear. I'm speaking to myself as well.
Yeah, they all saw my face.
Yeah. I know. I'm just saying, it goes a long ways. And if a person has a purpose or a goal or an end game, they will stay alive to see it.
Yeah,
Great question.
You have to find what the things that they like. I
Excellent.
find when I do physicals, I ask kids, what do you like to do outside of school? What do you like to do if I ask you to turn your phone off? What did you do over the weekend? And I find that a lot of parents don't ask that because they look astounded at the answers that I get. And what he was mentioning, you have to foster it because a lot of times they'll tell me something and then I'll ask more questions and the parent is sitting there kind of agitated as to why I'm entertaining what they think is nonsense. And as he said, if it's not legal, now sometimes the things that they say may be a little obscure, but then that's when you delve into why to see if maybe you can understand what they're truly trying to grasp. You have to understand you're talking to a child or an adolescent, teen. They may not have the right words to tell you what's moving inside of them, so they may tell you something that might seem a little obscure, but then I'll say, oh, so do you like to do X, Y, and Z? And then you may come up with the answer. And another thing, as he did mention, most parents, if it's a boy, oh, they're going to play football, or oh, they're going to play baseball. And when I ask, I say, what about art? Do you like to read? Do you like to draw? Because a lot of times in that neutral space where there's that third party, they will belt out something that their parent wasn't aware of, and then I let the parent use that as a jumping off point from when they leave the visit to further explore this new thing that they didn't know at first.
Purpose and joy are at the center of my coaching practice. I find right now my movement is that joy is the way us as Black and brown people revolt. Because we have been kept away from joy for so long, forced to work, forced to do things that we didn't want to do. And it is important, I think, that this new generation, probably starting with you down, really has the opportunity to actually engage in things that connected to joy. Because your generation, like boomers and the greatest generation and the silent generation didn't have that opportunity. You were segregated. You couldn't just do what your heart told you to do in mass. You had to work. You had to get a college degree. It wasn't a function of options. It was a function of survival. And so our generation, I'm millennial, but then there's X, and then there's Z and Alpha. Especially up to the millennials, we were raised by boomers who were told, like, no, just do what you have to do. Go to school, finish this, do that. You got to be a doctor, you got to be this, you got to be that. So I don't blame anyone for having this experience of wanting their kid to succeed, because we tend to believe that the way we did it is the way it should be done. And that's a very human experience. But having to sit in more flexibility and understand that the world is different now. After the recession in 2008, people's income has not gone up. Your kids are not making more money than you did in the 70s, but housing is 10 times, 100 times more expensive. Your kids aren't gonna have houses. They might not. It's okay. They might not.
Okay.
TikTok's trying to get us to all live in cars.
We're
so
not here to
don't get me
depress the
started.
parents,
No.
Dr. Alley. Yeah.
I'm letting them know the reality of what their kids are going through, because I think at the core, something that you said too, even connecting back to the question about substance abuse, is non-judgment. in that things are different for our kids. I don't have kids, but this generation, it's different. Being a TikTok star might be the smartest thing they could do.
What's that? What's that?
Being a TikTok star might be the smartest decision they could make. Being a YouTube star, your kid might bring home millions of dollars, okay?
Yeah,
So
it's different.
you also have to focus on the mental health of it all, create balance, but instead of fighting and pushing against the progress and the way things are changing, take a non-judgmental stance to look at your kids' talents, to look at your kids' joy, and use your knowledge from college, from grad school, of finances, of investment, to help structure your kid so they now understand how to turn their love of video games into a channel that can make your whole family some money.
Yeah.
And this,
Right.
and this leads into my next question. How can we as community members create a safe space for our youth and young adults so that if they are struggling with substance abuse issues, or they're struggling with their mental health, that they feel that they have support or individuals they can go to and express this to, and we can help them navigate through that.
Well, they could call me.
But I think one thing
Levine
too
calls me.
is we have to include all the Gen Xers, all the millennials, all the boomers that now have kids. They need to find their joy. Because that's why when I refer, I usually try to use facilities that have family therapy and then encourage the parent as well. Because the millennials and the Gen Xers and the boomers, yeah, they had to do it one way, but in that they're so rigid in their ability to shift and sit in their discomfort instead of shifting through the discomfort. They have to be willing to make the shift, because the child is constantly watching what you do. And you can't just tell them, oh, choose your joy, or do what when you alone are not doing it yourself. So as the community, the elders have to understand that just because it worked doesn't mean it was the right way. That just because you paid off your house doesn't make you happy. And then you have to be willing to explore your trauma and shift your thinking so that we can ever evolve. And that's an issue and a disconnect between millennial cusp, Gen Z. Everybody wants to say, oh, I didn't do it this way. And then the young people are like, oh, well, you don't understand because you're old. And it's not really true. Everybody, like she said, this is an unhappy place. It is a place based on perception and not reality. And we have to shift ourselves, look at ourselves, stop being okay with mediocrity and want for something more, not tangible things, something more, but a life that is purposeful and is giving to the community to mean something more.
Yeah.
And you don't want to lose the love of unity and community and family just because of our differences.
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the head. Because the more joy we experience, the more we can pour into other people.
Yeah.
We show up differently.
You can't
Right,
give from an empty cup.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. I'm a celebrity coach. I work with celebrities, people you see on TV, people you see playing sports all the time, people doing these things, and I help them rebrand themselves. And I think rebranding is a delve into purpose and joy. It's figuring out, how do I authentically connect with who I am? And you show up entirely different in your life. When I was being trained as a psychologist, we talked about generalization and how when a person changes in one area of their life, so let's say you help them work on the relationship, then you'll start to notice maybe their mood disorder will get a little better. Maybe their experience at work might be a little better because they're less irritated, because they're not sitting with a partner at home that's always vexing them. And so as you create change in one part of a person's life, it tends to be contagious. So when you help somebody find joy, when you help somebody find purpose, it tends to kind of ripple throughout every part of them.
I love the conversation about joy, because I think, like you said, from a cultural standpoint, sometimes we haven't given ourselves permission to do that. So totally agree with that.
We barely even love drums in our church.
I gotta give the other side of it as well. We have told our young people, look for your passion, right? And what's missing from that discussion is the payment for your dreams is you being able to tolerate some pain. That's a fact. That's a fact. And in their pursuit of, these goals, whenever they experience something negative, they're like, well, I must be doing something wrong. Yeah. And no, because we're sitting in the back like, look, where I got to, I had to stomach some pain. And so my thing is, look, dream. Dream powerfully and identify what will be worth the pain, okay? I think the mistake is when you don't take the time to figure out what will be worth the pain, and then you experience the pain just, haphazardly, and you still don't get what you wanted. No, figure out what you want and be ready to pay for it in pain, and then and you'll be happy at the other end of things. So I just want to balance it with that
And then
component.
That's grit.
had a question in the audience.
Yeah, she had a question.
She had a
Yeah,
question.
she had.
I ascribe to children not having to have a college degree. Because, for example, there are jobs out there where they can learn a craft, go to trade school, and gain a skill. So they don't necessarily have to go to and get a 4-year degree or master's degree, doctorate, and all of that. They can still make a life and a living for themselves and still have that passion and purpose in something that does not require so many years of schooling. So as a parent, is it a bad idea to share with your children, you know what, I went to school, and my way that I went to school, you don't necessarily have to do it that route. You can choose the route that fills your heart with joy and gives you a purpose of serving yourself and others.
I'm a fan. I think that's fine, but I think also we have to have some level of flexibility. Number one, that job may be taken over by AI in 2 years. So we can't forget that. And I say if we are wanting our kids to go to college, I say as a community and individually, we also need to get more creative about how we're funding that.
Yeah.
Because the last thing we want is for our kids to go and get a degree for a job that AI will take over, and then now they owe $200,000 in debt. And so we want to make sure that we're setting our kids up for success. And so it's about helping them find grants, helping them find scholarships, putting them in the sports that will get them the scholarships. Like, I'm telling you, if I ever have kids, they're going to be rowers.
They're gonna be what?
Rowers. My husband is 6'6". We are going to have kids with broad shoulders. They are going to row. And they're going to get into Harvard on a cruise scholarship. Okay?
But
And the
you
reality-
also have to understand that's another place where the parentals have to look inside of themselves, because I have a lot of parentals who did not go to college, and they want their kid to, quote, do better than they did. So they put that on them, not understanding that that might not be the path. So if you're okay with that, that's good. Another question I ask in my teenage physicals are, what do you want to do after you graduate from high school? And the question is not what college are you going to go to. I ask them what they want to do. I always encourage those kind of single jobs, plumber, electrician, especially after COVID, because as she said, some jobs went away when it came back, but there are certain things that the world will always need. But again, the parent has to let go of living their dream through their child. So that is an option, but that's also a thing the community has to do as a part of self-reflection. Now, there are some things that I do encourage just because there's a need, as regards to still less than 2% of the population in the United States of physicians are African American, but African Americans use the largest amount of insurance and have the highest health disparities. Now, the problem is, if you don't trust who's telling you what to do sitting across from you, you're probably not going to do it. So those kind of things where we need assistance, yes. But if you know your child had struggled in high school, there's nothing wrong with being a mechanic or HVAC or a roofer. All I want them to do is be proud, take pride in what they do, and do their best.
I hate to be Debbie Downer. I agree with everyone on the table, but reality is, do you want the child living with you forever? Okay, so you do need a plan. And case in point, I don't want to put my family's business out in the street, but I think I might. We have 3 daughters in total. 2 told the other daughter that wasn't wanting to take the plan, that the rest of the entire family has taken, which means terminal degree. They said, okay, so which one of us will put the other sibling and make a guest house in their garage for them? So there are some levels of of reality.
We did have that conversation.
Yes. So guess which one we're talking about? Okay.
Not me.
And then
So I'm just saying, you don't have to be judgmental, but if that's what your child wants to do, just have
plan.
other plans. Know that you may have to convert your guest house or rent an apartment down the street for them, or they're going to be there with you throughout eternity because they have to eat.
Well,
I'm going
And
to
in-
take a question from one
Thank
of
you
our
so
audience
much for all the information and the resources that you have given us. I still want to touch back on what if we, because we talked about people in the church that may be having problem with drug and we turn the other way. What can we really do to help those? Because a lot of time too, some of us may use drugs and we're saying, oh, this makes me feel better, especially if they have some issues going on. So what do we say to these people?
Yeah, so an incredibly powerful truth is to recognize that living your purpose can heal your pain. Okay, it's a very, very important overarching premise. Living your purpose can help you heal your pain. So now, what you would do is you would coach along those lines. I know it may seem like we're just talking, but we are really trying to share with you the foundations that are critical to address this issue. So, as a child is growing up, if I remove myself from falling into the trap of trying to have that child live for me, my wife is a nurse and I'm a psychiatrist, and I don't know what we modeled, but our daughter made it clear, I will have nothing to do with the healthcare community. I don't know what we modeled.
boring.
Her first job, her first passion was fashion designing.
Yeah, because it's
And
fun.
I was like, thank God, there will be some money in this house.
Dr. Alley wanted to be tell him.
Yeah, fashion designer. That's why I'm a life coach now.
Yeah.
Yeah, she wanted
And
to be
why I work
fashion
on
designer.
TV, because sitting in an office is boring.
And we conditioned ourselves to get behind that. Everything was about fashion designing. I was like, you want to learn math because you want to learn how to count your money. Everything we pushed that. Lo and behold, she woke up one day and said, no, I don't want to do that. Now she's more interested in public policy or law. But the bottom line is we made it clear to her, whatever you choose, we're going to get behind you and we're going to push it so long as it makes sense. But the idea being...
Makes sense to you or to her?
Huh?
I'm just
Ask
interjecting.
him.
It's collaborative. Don't you wish I was stupid enough to say it only makes sense to her? That's all that matters.
Actually, that would be nice.
The brain is not fully developed until 25. So just FYI, and that's a fact.
And freshmen changed that major how many times? Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So now if you've developed that relationship, if you've not relied on force, but you understand the power of influence, the significance of influence is I've gotten the sense that my parent respects me. And so now I can come to them with confidential issues. I can come to them with my problems, okay? Not because they force me, but because I value their influence. That is a tremendous thing to foster with your children. And that comes from communication, and the most important part of that communication is listen. Learn how to listen. Why? Because you're just going to listen and say nothing? No. But so that what you have to say can be informed by actual listening. And so that then goes back to everything else that we've said. If your kid needs, support, there's their pediatrician, there's insurance if you have that, and so you consult and say, hey, who can we reach out to? If they need mental health, then you address the mental health. I think it's already been said, but a psychiatric diagnosis starts with a medical rule out. So the first thing you have to establish is that there isn't something medical going on. And once that's been ruled out, then you can go to psychiatric. Now, for those of you who say, I don't have insurance, don't underestimate the power of the county resources. Don't sleep on that. And so now you can say, okay, well, let me see what's available. How can I get the support that they need? Now, we talked about the health disparities before because that's important. It's not just us who are against mental health. At times it feels like mental health was against us. There were significant periods in history where their intellectual property was used against us. okay? They literally had diagnoses that attacked us. I mean, I'm not even going to get into it. But the bottom line being,
Drapetomania?
That's one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they literally came out with these diagnoses. They talked about slaves that were like problematic, and they tried to pathologize that problem. I would be proud of a slave that was problematic, because we were not made to be enslaved. That's not a pathology. That's actually physiology. So we have reasons why we have trouble trusting the mental health community. We have reasons. But nevertheless, so what I'm saying about that is partner, stay involved, and make sure that what's being espoused, that practitioner is respecting your beliefs. That's important, and you do have to stay engaged. But yeah, you walk through that process because there are services available. And of course, listening will attune you to what the interventions are that you need.
So, and when it comes to substances, I think research is kind of looking at substance abuse a little differently. Like the study that you mentioned, back in the day, we used to look at, the study was done with a rat in a cage with water that was full of cocaine. And they found that the rat would rather drink the cocaine water than the water that was just typical water. But they redid the study and filled the cage with other things. So there was water, cocaine water, female rats, friend rats. There was like a little wheel to run in. There was like play things for them to do. And when the rat had other things to do, it only used the cocaine recreationally. It did not use it until it died. It used it every once in a while for fun and then stopped using it and lived a healthy life. And I'm not saying that we necessarily use cocaine recreationally, but what I'm saying is that it's about context. They called it Rat Park, and that if we are sitting in an empty cage with nothing else to do but use, we will use. And if we are sitting in an empty life with people who have left us, we will use. And it might be something, it might not be substances for everyone, it might be food, it might be other types of things, sex addiction, all different types of things. And so the isolation is a part of the problem. And so when we look at, we have treated substance abuse historically as a character flaw. We have judged people for being on substances. We have removed ourselves from them. And some people you got to stay away from, because some people truly might have, some violent issues, and that's a whole different thing. You can be a user that's not violent. And so I think that we have to adjust the way that we look at substance use and understand that people are doing it for a reason, and that empathy is important, especially as espoused Christians, leaning into the way that we know how to treat people who are struggling. Because one of the top 3 substances used is opiates, and it's not people looking to freebase and to use heroin. It's people who have pain problems, who are not being accurately addressed, and who get addicted to opiates. You can get addicted to opiates within 7 days. And if you have a chronic pain issue that you've had for 10 years, it's more than 7 days, right? And so it's not a character flaw issue to not want to experience mind-crushing pain. And so I think that it's going to be important for us to adjust and let the experts do their job, because I think the average number, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I might have old data, that it takes about 7 times in rehab for a person to actually address and get through a habit.
Yeah.
And so we have to love people through that.
It is estimated that it's a 20-year career, typically,
we have to,
when a person, for a person that's the natural life cycle of addiction, 20 years. So very powerful. Can I just add this caveat? Because I talked about championing people's, passions. Please have your children protect themselves from head trauma, okay?
Too late.
Please take that seriously. So and I understand even with football now, they're being much more diligent about avoiding head trauma. But I'm talking about, they start talking about, hey, I want to do boxing and I want to do this, and look. This brain, it is the most important thing you own. This is what's going to get you through life. This is what's going to help you solve problems. This is what is going to connect you to your dreams. The difference between you having your dreams and not having your dreams is your brain, okay? So that you have to protect. So I just want to add that little caveat.
Number 1 head trauma sport is cheerleading, by the way.
What's that?
Sorry, yeah,
Cheerleading.
I'm gonna wrap up.
Number one.
Before I wrap up, I would like to take one more question from our audience.
I really don't want to get too deep into this, but I know that we're living in a technological age where cell phone use, the internet, the Instagram, all these other external influences really do impact the minds of our kids. And they're hearing from us, but they're hearing from a lot more other people than they do us, because I think the average kid might be on their cell phone like maybe 15, I don't know the data, 15 hours out of the 24.
It's
I'm
a
just
lot.
saying, because some of them go to bed with the phone and they're just on it, and it's like they're not having other social skills. They're at the dinner table, the cell phone is there, and that's just like the go-to thing. And they're looking at different sites, it's like, how do you really control that? I know it doesn't begin when they are older. It has to start setting some boundaries from much earlier. That's my idea, but I would like to hear from you, and I guess this probably will be the last, because how does that also translate to anxiety and depression in youths? Maybe each panelist could give a one-liner, and then...
If you want a terrifying image that's very, very real, imagine your child walking into their room and 7,000 people with lab coats walking in behind them. Yeah. Like, that's literally what you're dealing with a phone. You're talking about the brightest minds dedicated to having them get addicted to their phone. Like, that's what we're dealing with. I would say, like, crystallize that image in your mind so that you then handle administering the phone accordingly. Like, I don't want you going to bed with 7,000 people following you into that bedroom. I don't want that. That phone stays with me, you know? I just mean that's the kind of mindset. Please understand what is on the other side of that screen. And what has gone into it. It has been designed for you to get addicted to it. Like, this is what they're saying now. So with that said, we should be very responsible with the age at which we introduce the cell phone. Yes. I think a powerful app would be the flip-top app. Like, imagine an app that turns the phone into a flip-top phone where nothing else is available but just being able to call, because that's why we say we give it to them, right? So that they'll be able to call us, you know? Imagine if it turned the phone into a flip top, and for very, very discrete periods, you were able to do a little social media, and then it would just die and go right back to being a flip top. Like, that thing would be off the chain.
Some may
You would
argue
have
that
so
that
much
feels like
withdrawal.
censorship.
Well, there are parental
so much
apps where you
withdrawal.
can cut the phones off.
Yeah.
So the simple answer is that you have to be a parent. You made a conscious decision to bring a life into the world, and you need to stop letting the child parent you. That's really what it boils down to. I do physical exams where the parent is looking at the phone when I'm trying to examine their child. So how are you going to tell that child to get off? I'm the one telling everybody to put the phones down in the room. And this foolishness that I have 18-month-olds, 15-month-olds, the parent is actually excited. They'll say, so Dr. Hogan, what you can do? They'll swipe the phone, do the sign, open it up, and it's constant Baby Shark, and it's constant Peppa Pig, and it's constant everything. So the simple answer is the parent has to choose to parent, because a lot of times, and I understand parents have a lot of things going on when there's multiple children, and they want to take the path of least resistance. So they hand the baby a phone, or they hand the child a tablet. And the way I can get them to stop is because many more children wear glasses at 3 and 4 on exams, especially post-COVID. A lot of kids have flashing, blinking lights. They suffer from headaches. So they have medical problems. They have backaches because of poor posture from always leaning over. So I try to explain to them, but the minute I say that the AAP recommendation is no screen time Monday through Friday and 2 hours Saturday and Sunday with 30-minute breaks, everybody in the room rolls their eyes at me. Oh, wow. So that is the recommendation, and it's been recently decreased because of COVID. So these are the recommendations, but the parent, with that knowledge, you have to parent. You have to take the phones, as she said. You have to go and find the parental controls that will shut it off, the timers. You have to issue that with some type of boundaries that has to be set.
And Dr. Allison?
Yeah, I think that it's important to begin to set rhythms, right? Humans like rhythm, and if we set the rhythm, and I also believe in focusing on, again, joy. So if your kid likes things that aren't on the phone, make sure you build those things into their day too. So they're excited to play in the bathtub. They're excited to play with their chalk. They're excited to, cook in the kitchen with you. I mean, what did our parents do? We didn't have TikTok.
Nope.
Parents have been entertaining children from the beginning of time when we were just banging sticks together.
If it was up to me, my kids would never have had phones.
I mean, well, they can figure it out. They'll figure it out. And there's also something very psychologically gratifying about free play. It's important for children to be able to utilize creativity, and one thing that apps can decrease is the ability for creative expression, because they're given everything, right? And so and I also believe using technology is important. So I think your kids do need phones. I think your kids do need tablets, because they're about to enter into a world where the #1 job is going to be, AI prompt generator. Do y'all know what a prompt generator is?
What is
Or
it,
a
Dr.
prompt engineer is a person who can communicate and provide effective prompts for AI, which is taking over to make sure that the AI will do the things that we need to be able to do. And so if your children cannot code, they will not have a job. If your kids cannot prompt engineer, they might not have a job. And so they need to have access to this information, but you can also structure it in a way to where what they're doing on this app isn't just Peppa Pig, because there's kids with British accents now because of Peppa Pig.
Yeah,
Literally, kids have British accents who are not British, because they're being taught to speak from Peppa Pig. And so there's ways to use your technology in a way to actually grow your kid. Your algorithm is a reflection of what you are interested in. So if your algorithm is all violence and nonsense, what's going on with you?
I think there's a balance, though. I think that's what we're all talking about. And parenting and boundaries.
I keep hearing that phrase.
Yeah. And I mean, if I had young children now, and I had the control back in the older days, there would be a certain age in which a child would have access to a phone, and it would be certain times.
So I think what I'm hearing from our panelists is to use discretion with our kids.
Definitely.
So at this time, I do want to thank all of our audience members for coming out to this forum. And I'd like to thank our guest panelists who have provided us such an insightful conversation on recognizing and managing anxiety and depression in our youth.
Thank you.
Also, I have flyers for the free mental health resources, so you guys can find me after the event, and I'll be sure to give you one. Thank you.
On behalf of the health ministries and the youth ministry, we want to say thank you to all our panelists. We were well informed, and some of us are thinking now, what are we going to change when we go home? How are we going to do things differently? Thanks to our moderator for a wonderful job. And we do have some buttons here that you can take, each of you, before you leave, because we want to promote mental health. I don't understand why when it affects from the chin up, it's a problem, but we say that one is mental, but we don't say that one is hypertensive, that one is diabetic.
Wow.
I don't understand. It's a disease, and it's chemical imbalance in the brain, and people struggle, and they need support. The problem is that we push some of them to suicide because of how we respond. Now, I am tasked with rolling out this as the youth ministry leader of Kansas Avenue Seventh-day Adventist Church. Came up with this idea of safe space dialogue box. I know we know about safe space dialogue, but I just kind of coined something, a safe space dialogue box. I'm going to ask my husband to bring this box up, and you can. I wish I had this. So So show it to our panelists. I mean, they're the expert. I wish I could consult with each of them before I come up with this to say what's better, what's not. But I think it's good to start somewhere. So it's a literal, a safe space is both a literal and a figurative supportive atmosphere that promotes open communication with empathic and non-judgmental listening, as well as problem solving and mutual respect for all. So the concept of safe space dialogue box for our youth here at Kansas Avenue Church is to provide for both a literal and a figurative moral space where our youth can feel free to ask questions about issues that they might be struggling with and would otherwise be uncomfortable talking about openly. It's a space where they can make suggestions, also raise concerns and voice opinions. The box would serve as the literal space, addressing the issues and the concerns that are raised in a safe, supportive, non-judgmental, in a timely, empathic manner would constitute the figurative moral space. Now, why is the safe space dialogue important for our youths? It attempts to protect from bias and threats. Safe spaces are curated environments where individuals can breathe and authentically exist without fear of persecution, ill treatment, or judgment. Now, the idea is to identify safe persons within the church. For instance, maybe the youth pastor, the health ministry leader, a mental health professional. We have a licensed marriage and family therapist who consented that you'd want to be participating in that space. And maybe the youth leader myself, I'm a critical care nurse. I've had some experience in mental health, nothing to talk much about, but I am aware. I'm also an advocate for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So I'm very much interested in mental health. So what will addressing concerns look like? It would be through youth forums, panel discussion during AY or Vespers, and we would design programs to address the various topics that emerge when we check the box, or having a figurative safe space dialogue if that is something that the person would like. Putting the name on the papers when they express their concerns is optional. Whatever those concerns are, it could be something to do with mental health or maybe not. Yes.
I just wanted to add the one thing that the church did many years ago, and Dr. Alley was definitely an active leader with it. Friday nights they used to have youth cafes, and they would, Alley
Created it.
I know.
And the parents shut it down because I wouldn't let them in the
I was
meeting,
trying to
so-
be nice. We're visitors, and as well as members. But you're right. Yeah. It was an excellent avenue, and I would love to see you all do it again. And I'm not obligating Dr. Alley, but yeah, but someone in her generation might your daughter or someone, might really take the box to the next level. Because
Yes.
when you feed people, that's our culture. We like to talk.
So we do have, we're open for suggestions. So we do have our Vespers with our licensed marriage and family therapist. Last night we had a great session. So it's a ongoing Vesper series, well, 3-part to begin with. And then we'll be having other professionals and personnel coming in, talking with the youths, getting them in an environment that is kind of not very restricting, just kind of relaxing and to just talk with them. So that's something we have embarked on. Now, before you go, let's continue with the rollout. How often will the box be checked? We will do so like weekly, and it could be myself, Elder Macbeth, or the pastor, whoever safe person is, to check the box. We take the papers out of the box, see what the concerns are. If anything, it's a red flag, like I feel like I want to kill myself, and the name is there, we definitely would have to find that person and get that appropriate, get the appropriate resources involved. So this is basically what we're trying to do as a start, because I believe in starting somewhere. I think it's time that us as a people and as a church kind of start the dialogue about mental health. And we've been having the dialogues, but the action in terms of really actively doing something, especially post-COVID, which, it's like a storm upon us. My husband is a teacher, and he will tell me about what is happening in the schools, and I will walk into the restroom, and there are kids there throwing drugs in the flushing it. It's really something. I talked to my daughters, and both of them said, I don't think I'm going to have kids.
Wow.
Because it's like, what kind of society are they going to be raised in? And another thing I want to mention before we go is that I purposefully this text on this box that says, 1 Peter 1, verse 5 to 7, that says, cast all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. And it's not to say that, okay, just pray and you'll pray it all away. But I also want our youth to understand that praying, reading God's word, and getting really focused on that also helps. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all things will be added. So we have to kind of embrace the spiritual component, because it is very, very important, and teach your children to pray.
I want to congratulate you on taking the initiative. So compliments, and then I would also add a digital version of that would probably be very suitable for this digital generation.
Thank you.
But well done.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention too, I know I'm not in charge, but I just want to give kudos to everyone that was here to give their time and to come and listen and continue with communicating. Because if we don't communicate with each other when we go home, you know, and we face the real issues, then what are we, you know, supposed to do? Because not all of us can afford to go to mental health, and most insurances only cover for a certain period of time anyway. Yeah, and I also wanted to mention our culture, our church. We are very critical. The thou shall nots need to stop. We need to love everybody as they are at the level that they are.
Well said.
Thank you.
All right, thank you once again for coming out, and we want to thank our panelists. They did a fantastic job. Yes. Let us put our hands together and sing for them. All right, so we're going to pray to close. Our Father and our God, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for the information that was disseminated to us. We ask that you will help us to utilize the information so that we can help our youth, we can empower them. We ask that as we go now on this busy street, that you will guide us and protect us on our way home, and save us all when you come in your kingdom, we pray. For Christ's sake. Amen.
Thank you.
Not much, no. Kids are good. Oh. Can we get a picture of? Thank you. Yeah, she was a good kid. But one time I will say off camera when all these mics are off. Yeah.
Yeah, this is fine.
Yeah, we'll do both. We'll do both. Yeah.
It's been a long day. Are you going to send this to us, or should we get our own camera?
Thank you.
Would you like to sit, ma'am?
Well, there we go.
He's bigger than me, man, so you know.